Reverend?
Well, what I was saying to you is that that was my experience in the system, but also at the time in the system, like it was a rehabilitation facility for people that were alcoholics. You know, they didn't have the fancy go to this and pay money over here and do that. I mean, the Hollywood movie stars did, but for the regular people, you just volunteered yourself to go to stay at Santa Rita for 90 days and dry out. You weren't a prisoner. You were a volunteer inmate. So one of the inmates that came through was Reverend G.W. Killens, George Washington Killens. And he was like Aretha's dad, Aretha Franklin, Reverend C.L. Franklin. That was when Aretha first started in the church. We'll get to that. But Reverend Killens was the black preacher of the time. He was a people's preacher. I mean, he was a teacher when we had preachers in that day. They didn't just get up on the stage and say, God intended for you to have this and do this and do this and do that. They told you a story, like I'm telling you the story of my life now. The preachers would take you to church, and if it was the crucifixion, they would take you step by step from when God was a baby to when he went up and Pontius Pilate wiped his hands and the way he carried the cross. You know, they would walk you through that. You would see it with them, and then they would wind up with him being hung on the cross. And that old preacher, the call and response, you know, yes, preacher, right, preacher, and they hung him on the cross, and he bled until he, amen, you know, and it was that type of thing. And you saw that story. Well, we come from storytellers. Well, during this time, Reverend Killens was that type preacher. And they were glad when Killens came to try out because the regular chaplain was a little small white chaplain, a little chaplain, you know. And people went to church. So when Reverend Killens came to church, man, the church was full, you know. All around the church was full, you know. So, and being on the paper and all that, I met Reverend Killens. Well, when I got out, the marriage I had, I told you I got married before when I was in the Navy, didn't work. We came from different sides of the tracks, you know, and it's one of them, mama told you not to do it, but you did it anyway. Yeah, okay. That's enough said about that. You know, it just didn't work. One of the good examples why it didn't work it was I knew that I couldn't provide what she wanted, that what she saw on television, that the white women had, you know, commercials, this, and this. Well, we wasn't making that kind of money. Yeah, and I understand that you want that. It was like, oh, we got this. They have that too. Well, I didn't have the money to buy the A brand. I had to buy the B brand. You know, of course you want the A brand. Well, you know, that creates conflict. And that goes to the demise of the black family, a lot of other things. But I want to stay where I am right now, Reverend Killens. I'll tell you about that later. Reverend Killens was the pimp preacher too, because where his church was on Seventh and can't remember the street. It was on 7th Street in West Oakland. West Oakland, 7th Street was the main street, was the main drag. Had the liquor stores, had the churches, had the girls that were working down on the corner, everything. But St. Matthew's Baptist Church was respected because it was a church. And I mean, in the day, our culture, you respected the people. It was you were raised to respect your elders. You said yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, thank you. You know, you were raised that way. And if you didn't, you got a backhand when you was coming up. Boy, what did you forget? Yes, ma'am. You know, you respect your elders. So you respect the church too, because all of us were raised in the church. And Reverend Trillians was that kind of storytelling preacher, so everybody could follow him along. And also, he didn't discriminate against the people that were the alcoholics, because he was one himself. But so the people just flocked to Reverend Killens. He was just a person. Just I'm one of you. You know, I have my problems. You have your problems. You know, God is for us all. So he became my godfather.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so and that's how I got into the religious side of knowing what religion about. Cecil Williams, now the big Cecil Williams, Glad Memorial Church in San Francisco, the big one. When Cecil Williams first started, I was with Reverend Killings. I used to drive him around after service, and Reverend Killings said to me, he had diabetes, and he was on his deathbed. He said to me, "That's Cecil Williams. Watch out for him. He's going to be a booger bear."
A booger bear?
A
What's
booger
that?
bear.
I don't know what that
A
is.
booger bear means a big bad bear.
Oh,
A
okay.
big bear. A bad bear. A booger bear. So he said that's Cecil Williams. He's going to be a booger bear. Like today it's what we call our mega churches.
Uh-huh.
They're the booger bears.
Okay.
So that's how Glad Memorial started. I was there when Glad Memorial started at 7th Street. Uh, all the bars up and down. Slim Jenkins was the major black bar on 7th Street. Now, other people will tell you that part of the story because I was doing radio and I was in and out of this bar, that bar, this bar, that bar, and I really was a part of that history, but I wasn't living in that neighborhood. So I don't know the in-depth history of that. I know my part of the history on that street. Like where I was in radio, Esther's Orbit Room, where the blues were, Slim Jenkins, where the nightclubs were, and just in general neighborhood where the reverend and the preachers were. So I know that area. But the history of 7th Street is one that oh my God. I mean, you can look it up and Google it up. It's big. It's like the history of Central Avenue in Los Angeles. We'll get to that in the later part of the story. But that's how I met Reverend Killings, and that's how he became my godfather. That's how I got onto that side, the religious side, understanding that, and understanding when I got to Los Angeles, still being on radio. Aretha Franklin's dad, Reverend C.L. Franklin, Alex Bradford was another one of the big religious people. Brother Joe May, Mahalia Jackson. That era. I was broadcasting all during that era. So that's my turn in the system. That's how I met Reverend Killings. That's how I got to know, the religious side of it. And then when I got out, now I'm out. I'm not married anymore. And I meet my future wife, Sandra. Well, also when I got out, I went to school for nursing. Because growing up, like I told you, middle class, we were raised to be somebody. And like Martin said, if you're going to be a street sweeper, be the best street sweeper. Uh, I was not just content going to work and coming home. I always wanted to be somebody. Not just because I wanted to be somebody, because like in a way, I felt like I owed it to my mom because my two sisters, was three of us in the family, myself, Bertha, and Gwendolyn. They're both passed. But my oldest sister became a nurse, was a director of nurses and a head of OB-GYN, the Meharry Hospital at home, well known. My younger sister also became a nurse and went to Dallas, also became a lab technician teacher. So she taught lab at the college in Dallas, married Dr. Chandler, and they have their practice. And it's like, okay, Bubba, it's your time to do something now. And you're looking at what you done fluffed off and what you could have been if you done what mama said. So now you got to play catch up, And that, again, makes it different because that puts me out there as that different one again, because I'm not the average black. The average black now is a working black that was discharged, working at Goodyear, working at this place, working at that place, and I'm working at this place and working at that place, and I'm seeing what's going on. I'm still the same rebellious me, but I can't be rebellious because if I say that ain't right, I'm gonna get fired. But I see that ain't right, and I still got to keep my mouth shut to keep my job. Well, okay, you adjust to that. I mean, it's hard. You never really. Being black in America was not the easiest thing in the world. I imagine being any minority in a different country is not the easiest thing in the world. So I just don't want to get on this black kick. That I'm black. That's enough. That's why I tell my kids, y'all don't have to prove you're black. You're black. You're half black, you're half white. I'll explain that too. If you got a drop of black blood, as far as they're concerned, one drop of black blood, you black. One drop of Indian blood, you Indian. If you ain't all white, you something else. So growing up with all of that, man, and then getting out of the Navy and getting into 1960s Los Angeles, 53, 54, 55 Oakland. Well, let's just stick with the music scene for now because that gets into the civil rights part of the story. Reverend Killings and then Cecil, you're going to be a booger bear. Well, during that time in 7th Street, like I told you, I was a DJ. So I was in all the different clubs and I was playing records, and it just so happened that Lou Rawls came through town, and I was the one that picked up Lou Rawls and took Lou Rawls to KPFA to be interviewed by the people at KPFA. And since I took Lou Rawls to KPFA to be interviewed, they found out that I was a DJ, and that's how I got into KPFA, being a DJ at KPFA. And then that puts us into the music scene because I did not, like I told you, know that much about the neighborhood scene, but that industry scene during that time was like Lou Rawls, Earl Bostic. We had clubs like the California Club in Oakland was one of the big clubs in Oakland. The Watkins Hotel, in Los Angeles was a big hotel. The Dunbar Hotel in Los Angeles. That was a hotel the Booker T Hotel in San Francisco. All major big hotels. If you've seen the Green Book, you can understand where there were black neighborhoods. We had our own black hotels. So we evolved from the Green Book into, actually owning and having hotels. Well, that's where Duke Ellington would stay, Count Basie would stay. Like on 7th Street, they would play at Slim Jenkins. Slim Jenkins was the club on 7th Street. You had to dress. There was a dress code to go to Slim Jenkins. Now, the rest of them, you could go, you had to be presentable, but Slim Jenkins, you had to have like tie, shirt, coat, tie, suit. And the notables played there. They played at other places too. They didn't just exclusively, but Count Basie, his first appearance would be at Slim Jenkins. And then after that, the after gig could be at Joe's over there, Count Basie, but that's the afterward. Duke Ellington, Lena Horne, Donna Washington, Billie Holiday, Slim Jenkins. Well, being in radio, I noticed that there's a discrepancy here too. Like the programming that we're doing is not for everybody or about everybody. If you try to do that, then you're outside the mainstream. And if you want to, same thing. If you want to keep your job, you play this. You want to keep your job, you do this. We had a clock. You see the clock over here. This clock from 12 until 8 would be green. 8 to 12 would be blue. 12 to 15 would be yellow. All those indicated different types of music that you played. For instance, this would be an instrumental because it's at the top of the hour, just coming off the station break. After the instrumental, you would have a male vocal. That would be the blue. You'd play a male vocal in that slot. After the male vocal, you would have a female vocal. You'd play the female vocal in the green. And then you'd have a big band. So it was broken up into segments like that. And you weren't able to create anything. You were getting paid money. You were in radio, but it's all done for you, and the people that are doing it for you are playing what the people down here really want to hear. So here's the conflict again. So then you go to work in the Chitlin circuit. The Chitlin circuit, what we call the Chitlin circuit, is juke joints, small joints, cafes. Back in the South, chitlins was one of the staples of the meals. Chitlins, the hog intestines that they clean real good. Chitlins, cheap. They throw them away so you could get them. So that's the chitlin circuit. So I played a lot of chitlin circuits, but eventually I got noticed, and I went into college radio. College radio it's a different animal, but I had the freedom to create. You know, I had the freedom to be me, but it wasn't paying me nothing. You know? It's like a starving artist. You know, you ain't getting no money, but you got to show. Well, that's how I got into radio. That's what getting out of the prison system did. That's meeting the people and the reverends and being at the beginning of all of those things. And from there, having not had a successful marriage, all that. The point I was going to tell you about that I forgot about, the reason I get really thinks it's funny, is because I couldn't provide those things. I could only provide the B and not the A, you know, and you coming from here, and Mama told me not to do it, and me coming from here, you know, there's conflict. So back in those days, well, since all the commercials were white, wasn't no black people up there, well, you should get yourself a white girl. And because, again, I had a little bit more education than the average black because when I went in the Navy, out of the high school thing, but while I was there, I attended USAFI, United States Armed Forces Institute, and came out with an Associate of Arts degree. So I came out of the Navy with a degree, not only honorable education, but a degree that would get me into a higher education college. Because, I mean, that's what Mom put into us. Even though I was rebellious, I mean, it was still instilled into me, this is the way you do that, and if you want to progress. So I had that training, that bringing up, that raising. And when I was in the Navy, I knew that I better come out here with some kind of degree. They got a college, and I can go to college. I'm in the Navy. Oh boy, all right, Mom, I'm gonna come out. So that was to please Mom too. So I can those were the things I would say that put me a step above where I could get a little bit higher in the system, a little bit more over here. It's just like, there you go again. That's you. You know, so that's pretty much what it was. There, from Reverend Killers, we get into the music part of my life, where I was at the industry where they did the recording, because at the same time, uh, I was living in Berkeley. I told you I got out of the Navy discharge in San Francisco. One of the recording companies there, minority owned, was Music City, Berkeley's Music City. Well, Berkeley's Music City was Ray and Jan Dobart, and I lived just down the street from Berkeley's Music City. And having been on the air at KWBR, it was a natural for me to go to Berkeley's Music City because it's right up the street. You know, it was like the main thoroughfare of like the beginning of Shattuck, of Berkeley. And I lived just down here. The dividing line was like Market. I lived just across this first block on Market. I crossed the red light. I'm in Berkeley. So I was there when they recorded WPLJ, White Port and Lemon Juice, Annie Had a Baby, Hank Ballard and the Midnighters, the Drifters, all those artists that came through. And people say, well, did you know so and so? Well, I knew them in the sense that I was in the studio when they were recording. I was there when they were making these albums. You know, did I know them personally? Some of them I met, like Lou Rawls. I took them to places to be interviewed. You know, as you know, your contacts in music. You know, you do this as your job. So I knew them in that way, and several of the people. You know, I went on from there to college radio, and that got me into the civil rights movement. You know, having been in all these different radio stations and seeing this is the way you do it, talking about the clock, the red, the blue, the green, and not having the freedom to create, and getting into the university system. Well, when I left the religious system in Los Angeles and 7th Street, all of that, I went over the hill because I had gotten married during that time to a white girl. He told me you should get yourself a white girl. I got myself a white girl, you know? And you're right. It's more of where I came from than where it is over here. Because over here is where I came from, but it wasn't the neighborhood that I lived in where I came from. This is more like the neighborhood that I lived in, it's Salt and Pepper. But salt and pepper at that time wasn't really looked upon, cause like it was black and white. You married a nigger, you know. And it's like, okay, but as far as I was concerned, in relationship wise, Yeah, it was more like where I came from, and the relationship was like easier, the conflict because we already had the A, you know, we didn't have to worry about getting the A, and it's like I'm over here looking at me over here, and I'm sorry, but I don't care how big or whatever this happens to get or don't get. I ain't gonna never be nothing but me, cause I can always see over there. You know, people would tell me because I was had the education and I was the first black and the desegregation, all this. Well, there ought to be more people like you. And I said to myself, yes, there should be. They need to get over here and understand how you're doing things so we can do things like that over there and be successful too. That should be. I hadn't said that, I was thinking that. It's like, oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And this is here again. You're living in two different worlds. All my life, I've lived in two different worlds. As a kid, even the rebellious state of mama, as opposed to the ordinary kids growing up in all this, two different worlds. In the Navy, being integrated, being the first blacks here, as opposed to the other blacks that have never been in service, that haven't had this kind of training, two different worlds. I get discharged, I got this degree. That's another part that gets into the PTSD, but I get this degree and I'm out here, but there's no place for a black man with a degree. All the blacks out here that had the good paying jobs worked at the post office. They just they automatically went into the post office. But you want a job, go to the post office, Well, I'm sorry, but I ain't go to the post office. I want more than go to the post office. Well, now you're in the uppity nigga again. You don't know your place. You want to be white. No, I don't want to be white. I just want what white got. I want to be me with that. So that, get yourself a white girl, fine. Now I'm me with that. And there's when I went to school for nursing. We had two kids. The first kid, she had Sandra Otos. She was Swedish Norwegian. And we had the first kid, and she had depression, and she got over it. And we thought everything was fine. So we had another kid. Well, the depression came back this time, but much worse. Got very, very severe. She never recovered. Postpartum neurosis. Went into the mental institution. We had Camarillo. We had mental hospitals then. She went into Camarillo, and she died. She was there in and out for the rest of her life. She would go to her family and then just do weird things and on leave because I couldn't have her with the kids. So that's why I had one of the other reasons I wanted to leave Los Angeles because I went to school for nursing, East LA Jesse School of Nursing. Because I'm still on this career path at the same time. And during that time, I worked out of A1 Nurses Registry in Hollywood because as a student nurse, first black again, student nurse, don't have to be real. You nursing, you really in school? You got this training? Okay, A1 Nurses Registry is looking for male nurses. They need male nurses to work night shifts in hospital. You don't have to have a degree because you're working under the auspices of the RN. And you're a student nurse, so you're qualified. All right, now I'm nursing. I got a white girl, I'm nursing, and I'm living in the white part of town, but I'm still a nigga living in the white part of town. And now she's ostracized for being with a black man. Life gets tedious, don't it? That was another one of the old songs in the old days, the more country and western songs. Well, this is my life. This is just same. All this is happening at the same time because this is this year. That's why when they interview you and say, "Well, what happened?" Well, a lot happened. What part of this do you want? And it's all important to me, so I don't want to leave out none of it. If you want to know what happened, this is what happened. You pick and choose what you want out of it. But anyway, this is our life, and this is happening at the same time. Well, I'm not on the air now. I went to school for nursing. When get yourself a white girl. I met her. We met, and as a matter of fact, we met. we that's another part of my life story. Camarillo Mental Institution, the system. I'm gonna tag this in here real quick because it's relevant. It fits. Uh, when I got out, when I was in Santa Rita in the prison farm, and all these guys were in here, and since I had been arrested for paper, of course I'm listening to all the paper hangers and everybody, because we got the professionals here. They really know how to do it. I mean, we guys, I'm in here for like what, $700, $800, $900, just enough to be a fellow and just enough to be here. They're here for like thousands, just enough to be here, but not enough to go to prison. So they know how to work this mainstream thing, right? But they're stupid because they always go one time too many. So I figured, okay. So I listened to all of this while I was in there. And when I got out, I knew how the routing numbers and everything worked. So I went back into hustling. Hustling was a respected profession, and I was a paper hanger. So I just got back out in the streets. Like if you're a junkie, you know where to go get your fix. I just got back out of the street and got me some more paper. I wrote $2,000 worth of checks, tore it up, put it down. I guess they're still looking for that guy that wrote them $2,000 worth of checks. I didn't go to one more, because every time you're doing it, you're afraid because if you get caught, you're gone. There ain't no good guy for you this time. You know better. You know what you're doing. And that's what I figured. I know what I'm doing. Well, that's stupid because I was just lucky because I ain't know you know what you're doing. But I managed to pull it off. And that's how I got the funds to stabilize myself to meet somebody. So rather than they found out that I was writing checks again, but they couldn't catch me, so they came for me and they wanted to revoke my probation. So since I'd been to school for nursing, instead of letting me provoke my probation, when they was holding me in the case to revoke my probation, the dude go, ahead, man, you go 5150, man. 5150, they're going to send you to the hospital instead of back to the farm. I go, yeah, they're going to. So I just took my nurse's training and pretended I was crazy. I did all the things that you're supposed to do not to be capable and competent to stand trial. And I got sentenced to Camarillo, the state mental institution, right? And what they do there, the way the system worked then, you would go to Camarillo, get cured, come back and serve your time. Okay. So, okay, now I already been in nursing stuff, so I already know how this system works. So it's like being in the brig. But when I first got to Camarillo, there was a movie out by Olivia de Havilland called Snake Pit. And it was about a mental institution and people, how that environment, the beds and all around you. Well, I first went to Camarillo. It was a mental institution with mental wards, and wards with not so crazy people, and wards that were open wards, they called them. And then they had the shock treatment there at that ward. That's why I say you go to different parts of your life. There's so many parts that are important there. Well, since they had come back and got me and found out I was writing checks, they couldn't take my money away. So my $2,000 stayed in the bank and they was getting the interest. And they were sending me to Camarillo because they couldn't send me right straight back to jail. So at Camarillo, that's where I met my wife. Anyway, while I was there, Charlie Parker had just been to Camarillo. Bird had just been there. And me having this little old thing way back there in Santa Rita with the other dudes, I'm down here in the music room, and Bird's in the music room, and I got an upright bass. I didn't play it that well or that good, but when he wrote the song Relaxing at Camarillo, I was there relaxing at Camarillo too. It's my life. I mean, people would, my kids tell me, Dad, you should write a book. Well, okay, that's why I'm telling you all this. It ain't, you can't just put it in that little thing,
Yeah.
That's my life. Well, okay, I met Sandra, that was her name, in Camarillo, and she was in the outpatient ward. So people in the outpatient wards was just, they weren't really mentally unstable. They were there because they were probably there for getting treatment for this disorder, or learning how to talk or rehabilitate, some form of rehabilitation. That's what the outpatient ward was. Well, when I first got there, back to the story of just getting to Camarillo and Olivia de Havilland, the movie Snake Pit. Well, I first get to Camarillo, and of course I'm in custody, so I'm going into a closed ward. So they open the door, and the ward's like on a lower level. There's a wheelchair ramp going down to the lower level. That's why I said Snake Pit. There was a site type thing in that. That was the design. And I'm off the street, and I walk down the ramp, and I get in here, and this dude he goes, "Don't turn your back on him. He'll kill you." This other dude over here is walking around, T-balls over China, T-balls over China, and, and this dude over here, I mean, I'm scared to death because I'm in here with a bunch of real crazy people. I mean, these people are criminally insane. I ain't. What have I got myself into trying to get out of it this time? But here you are. Okay. Well, you're in there for so many days until, they found out your classification. So I wasn't that type of criminally insane. So they took me out. But since I'd been in the criminally insane ward, the automatic treatment for the people in the criminally insane was electroshock therapy. Electroshock therapy is where they laid you out on a table, took 2 electrodes, put it on each side of your head, and sent electricity through your body. Just like that. That was supposed to stimulate your brain and knock all the stuff out and do whatever. Look up electroshock, EST is called. So I'm ready now out of the real crazy bin up here into this barracks, and this barracks is the EST barracks. And everybody here has to go through this to get out. And I've seen them when they come out. I mean, like, you're out. I mean, and they put you in the bed, and you have to, you have to recover. Then they give you insulin, and they do what they do. Well, now I'm scared to death again because, man, I don't want that. Ain't nothing wrong. Well, they found out that I'd been to school for nursing and that I had nursed out of the nurses registry. So they enlisted me to help with the shock. I mean, God's working on my side everywhere I go. Okay.